And we're live.
On the internet?
On the internet.
But so many people are gonna see.
Yeah, what's even scarier, BC, is we're live on YouTube. And
The biggest platform in the history of mankind.
Is that true? It may be. If they have more like concurrent users than any other video service of all time, like surely it does.
Pretty sure it's Hulu, friend, but whatever.
That would be funny if for some reason like more people had Hulu accounts than any other streaming service.
We live in a Hulu world, you know? We're just a couple of YouTube boys.
You know, Hulu is now my favorite platform, BC.
Is that right?
Yeah, I finally tried it out. I can't remember what for, and now I just watch, you know, cartoons and anime and Alone.
I've been watching... Oh, it's the news. It's the Steve Carell show.
The Space Force one, or the one where he's got a patient that's
he's got the serial killer patient where he's chained to the bed. I've been watching a good deal of that. It's pretty good. It's not bad.
Good for him. Look at that broad career he's had.
He's really exploring all sorts of territories in his acting career. Apart from just being a generally funny and seemingly just regular nice dude.
Yeah.
Shout out Steve Carell. We'd love to see you in the Star Wars universe.
Would we? Let's think about that. You would, okay.
I think him as the mole man over Zach Braff would have been the move.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, I have no problem getting Zach Braff out of Star Wars.
Well, you know me, I'm a big Zach Braff fan, so obviously his appearance in Kenobi was very exciting for me.
I apologize to any Zach Braff fans. I don't know the man at all, nor his work. I never really watched The Scrubs.
I liked some of Scrubs, and then I sort of fell off, as a lot of people do, as series tend to run a little long in the tooth.
Why do I not like Zach Braff in the back of my head? Does he have controversy? He just date really young women. Is that the thing? He's one of those guys. Okay.
He was dating Florence Pugh, who's younger, significantly younger than Pugh.
Imagine that's a P. I don't know who Florence Pugh is either.
It's a GH. Yeah.
Have I told you I only watch Star Wars?
Yeah. We're aware that your cultural knowledge is limited strictly to Star Wars and cartoons.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But speaking of exploring new territories, BC, we got to talk about my other favorite streaming service, the Disney Plus.
The DP.
And get back on Andor. Should you rip-a-roo a little classic TCV intro?
Oh, don't you tempt me. Here I go.
I'm tempting you.
Do we need a clap or anything? Or are you going to be able to
Yeah, we might as well do one little clap. 3, 2, 1.
Look at how coordinated we are. We could be in the fucking Olympics.
You know, we thought about it for a long time, seriously, but please don't try to get us back in, guys.
It was a dark journey in our coordinated clapping adventures.
It's behind us.
It's in the past now. But I'll tell you what's not in the past is this sick-ass intro. Here we go. Hello there, and welcome to The Cargo Bay, a Star Wars conversation podcast being transmitted to you from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I am Brady C, here with my co-host, recently returned from his beach vacation on Imperial-occupied Neamos.
It's me, Adam B, all relaxed. How you doing, BC?
Man, I wish I was as relaxed as you. Looks like you had a good time on Imperial-occupied Neamos.
You know, it's my favorite kind of beach where you're at the beach, but the sun's still not out. Ooh, love it.
It's my favorite kind of beach where it definitely feels like you're on a British coastline and there's no actual beach. You're just watching the waves roll in.
Yeah, like sitting on stairs.
You're sitting on concrete.
It is truly like the only time I've been out of the country, I was in Liverpool when I was like 17. And I like cloudy skies. I really do. That's not a joke. Although at the beach, might want a sunny day here or there.
A little bit.
Even someone like me. But when I saw one of those sections where it's literally just like bleachers that allow you to watch the cold water slapping into the bottom of the bleachers, I was like, man, this is this is bleak. Like,
That is an imperial occupied beach. That's
even
what
if I'm
that
not
is.
gonna get into the water, I wanna know that I could get into the water.
I want to know that it's a possibility, and also that the water seems like it's something that I would want to get into.
Yeah, yeah,
Which, one, quick, sidetrack. I'm generally not psyched about getting in the ocean to begin with, just
yeah,
because it's a terrifying world of evil things that could harm you.
yeah.
I can only imagine it's that much scarier in the Star Wars universe.
Oh yeah, good
Think of
calling.
those ocean creatures.
Yeah, because they're already spooky. I used to be a major bodyboarder, man, when I first moved out to
Ooh,
California.
yeah,
Uh,
brother.
but me and my buddy Jason were going out like every weekend for a couple summers, or at least it felt like every weekend. We'd go out there get in the waves, and then I stepped on something called a stargazer, which is a terrifying creature, and it's very painful to step on. Um, Truly horrendous experience. So I've only been back out in that water maybe 2, 3 times in the 3 years since then. I got a little spooked myself of that undersea grossness. That's what we
Yeah,
need. We need a Planet Earth, but a Star Wars series where every episode is a different creature effects series.
come on. That's $1 million idea right there.
Yeah,
Get old Mr. Attenborough to do a little narration
yeah,
over it.
that'd be sick.
Ooh, ooh.
Ooh.
Well,
Oh,
we're right here, Disney. Let
I,
us know when you want our ideas.
I got another one. PC.
Oh, go, 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 go.
Steve Carell plays Dr. Pershing's assistant.
Oh. Is he a zany assistant, or is it a Steve Carell down to earth
It's a down
performance?
to earth performance where he just kind of makes that face that Dr. Pershing already makes a lot. That's why they're a good. That's why they're a good pair.
Just a couple of starey boys.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, ideas abound, ideas aplenty here today. We are going to be exploring some of the wonderful ideas in episode 7, announcements from Andor, which I am looking forward to talking about. We're going to do sort of a top 5. We've prepared a top 5 favorites list from this particular episode. This is more of a standalone, it seems like, as opposed to a big 3 episode arc, which we're about to go into. I think this kind of sets the stage nicely.
Yeah, I think
Before
we're.
we do that, oh, sorry to
No, no,
cut
no.
across you.
Before we do that, PC, I don't want to be
Uh,
punished.
if you guys only knew how much I have to chastise my co-host when we're off air,
That happens a lot.
genuinely concerning behavior. I was just gonna say, if you're listening to this, make sure you give us the 5-star review on whatever service
Hey,
you're listening to this on. Make sure you're subscribing. Tell your
please,
friends, tell your moms, tell your paws.
we beg you.
We're begging at this point. And also, if you're checking out the podcast, we do have a YouTube
Oh
uh,
yeah.
channel, which we're streaming live on right now. So we're
Uh-huh.
doing a little cross-platforming here, where we do exclusively our hobby talk, where we talk about Star Wars trading cards, games, uh, comic books, action figures, all sorts of fun stuff. So check that out as well. Just wanted to plug those various things where you can just put thumbs up and 5 stars and just like everything and subscribe to everything. It's a wonderful world we live in.
Yeah, we do. We would appreciate that very much, PC.
We also
Um,
have an email we don't check, so I
I
probably
need
won't. I'm
to
not going
check
to
that
plug that.
email.
Yeah, we say that. We've been
It's
saying that the
scrolling on the
last two
bottom.
months.
I swear I will check it this month. I'm just so certain there's nothing in there, but I should do the
It's
diligence
where
and check.
Disney will have emailed us the like, here's your offer sheet for creative executive positions with Star Wars. There's a 2-week time limit on this offer, and we'll be like, no.
I believe it. I wouldn't even really be that upset because that's just kind of how my life unfolds.
I'd
Like
be
it,
very
very,
upset.
very on brand.
I would be incredibly upset.
Well, let's not think about it.
Incredibly.
Let's just check the dang email. Maybe it won't be too late.
Yeah.
VC, before we get into our top 5, though, do you want to generally say if we like the episode or not?
I will generally say I effing loved this episode. Probably
Yeah,
my
baby.
favorite one so far.
Yeah. hard to beat, VC. I had some issues the first time I watched it, but I
Hmm.
watched it late at night, and I may have had a beverage or two, and upon a rewatch, I was like, no, that was you being stupid, not the show being stupid.
That
But
warm milk really got to you, huh?
yeah, it knocked me right out. I had the nods from my Milky.
And get the
Um,
sleepy milks.
Ew. I'd rather drink a Camtono a Dre milk than have a little bit of sleepy milk.
You want a little warm sleepy milk?
But I still loved it, even though I was slightly confused on occasion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, BC,
When you
this
say
is
confused, unpack your initial confusion just a little
it.
bit.
It was mostly the intercutting, and by the way, full spoilers. Get out of here.
Get on out. Get on out now. Run away.
Mostly the intercutting between Cassian reliving Klim's um,
Yeah.
death and whatever
Yeah.
was happening. And then also, I just thought it was way too funny that when he's shirtless, he's kind of like got his crotch right up against that box. He's just like in a weird position, and I thought it was definitely funnier and weirder than it was on a rewatch. I was like, what is he doing over there? Come on.
What are
Come
you
on,
doing with
Keith.
that box on your crotch? What's going on? What's going on, box crotch?
But overall, what I'm trying to get to, Brady, is this is what I've like dreamed of for Star Wars and imagined Star Wars having the capability of doing. And then I just thought it would never happen because, as I've said before, it takes so much, like, it takes great writing and excellent performances to pull something off like this, where we now have the Star Wars universe as a background to character drama versus the other way around. Like,
It's the Star Wars
the
universe
best. Yeah.
with characters.
Yeah, with stuff you could care about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I loved it. Absolutely. Like, this is something I've dreamed of and truly did not think would occur. Like, even when I saw the trailer for Andor and I was like, "Oh, this looks a lot better than I, expected. I'm getting excited about this." I still didn't think we were going to get this level of, like, we're going to get an hour-long episode with no laser fire. Like, all right, now we're talking.
I mean, listen. We're gonna be heaping obviously a lot of praise on this, and we have been.
The cargo bay is full of.
We're
praise.
full on Andor stands. This is like there's. So I will try to bring in a little. You ready for me to get negative about this? You want me to get negative about?
I'm ready, BC.
Andor.
We need it.
I thought some of the actual Cassian Andor stuff was just okay.
Yeah.
That's as dark as I'm gonna go. Really, it was more from my general expectation was like, oh, I don't know that he needs to be going back to Ferrix.
I predicted it though.
You sure did. And part of my thing was like, well, how did he get there if they're Imperial occupied? It seems like he's got money, he's got resources. Like I can explain that away.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, well, he's there. I'm glad he got there just for the Marva of it all. If I'm being honest, that's a highlight for me. But just some of his stuff, I think was overshadowed by how good everything else was in this episode. So I mean, even though it's the Andor show, I think the highlights were in every other portion of this, which were exceptional as opposed to okay.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like the Andor storyline. I was like, okay, cool, we're going on that journey, but I was like, get me back to the weird ISB plot line. Get me back to Karn. Get me back to Mon Mothma. Like there were just so many other things that were so good about it that I just thought Andor as our hero was kind of not a highlight for me personally.
I think we might get a lot of that as the series goes on, just in that Andor is our classic Star Wars character, stuck in this like, this genre that he's not, getting to show off in by being the action star all the time. But yeah, the first time I watched this, that was something too, where again, like I was intoxicated enough that my perception was different enough to be like, not only is this a little boring, this is bad and cheesy. And when I rewatched it, I was like, no, it's really not. Like it's
Yeah.
not bad and cheesy. I tend to have those over critical like reactions to anything if I'm not in my sober brain, BC.
Well, and the other thing too is like these are really dense. I mean,
Yeah.
the plot and the dialogue and the like the bureaucratic sort of talk that happens in this. Like this is there's a close watch that is needed for this that my brain is not always ready for when I pop it on at like as soon as I wake up on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
So like following some of it is a little bit harder, I would say, which is not a bad thing. I like the complexity of the show. I like that on a second watch it only gets better for me, which has largely been my experience when it's not like, oh, I've got to type an outline or whatever for 3 episodes. It's like if I'm just rewatching it to rewatch it, I'm usually like, this is even better than the first time I watched it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I've loved because it does have a really good rewatch factor. The second time I watched this episode, I was like, man, this is basically perfect. I have very few negative things, if any,
Yeah.
to say at all. Like all of the sort of misgivings I had about casting the story, I was like, whatever, this is great.
Yeah,
You
it
know, like
the show is really good at I hate when I am ahead of the show and I know where we're going and they take a long time to get there.
yeah,
Like that happens a lot in Star Wars. This was again, I would have preferred he not go back to Ferrix as well. But I thought that's what was gonna happen. And yeah, they were quick about it, but not messy. It's like we did get some okay, yeah, they want you gone. Let's not
yeah.
have a 3 episode arc on
You
Ferrix.
can't
Instead,
be
let's
here.
have a
You need
three
to get out of
episode
here.
prison arc. Which
Yeah,
great. Let's
yeah.
have the prison show for 3 Fs. That sounds great.
I mean, he's gonna be in there for the next 6 years. There's no escaping. What's he gonna do?
Well, VC, one thing you can ruminate over for those next 6 years are our top 5 lists. And we're talking top 5 of anything that we want, right, BC?
Any ding dang darn thing we want to talk about, it's a way for us to get into talking about all of the things we loved about episode 7 of Andor. Announcements directed by Benjamin Caro and written by Stephen Schiff. Shout out creative people.
Nice work, y'all. VC, should we start with the thing we both have on our lists? The person, rather.
You mean my numero uno?
That's right, VC.
The top of the pops, my number one, the lady who lives in my heart, the queen of the galaxy, the senator of all senators. That's right, baby. We're talking Mon Mothma.
Uh,
Ooh,
Wild.
ooh.
Has she been around since episode 3? VC, this actress.
Yes, she was. I believe she was. Her scene was cut out of episode 3, so she has been cast as Mon Mothma since like 2004
Wild.
or something like that.
I just said actress, which is something I almost never do. We're beyond actress now. Everybody's just actors, right?
I think so.
Okay,
We
yeah.
always
Well,
call people
usually I don't
actors,
do
yeah.
this, so I'm sorry I gendered that. But BC, she's a beautiful woman. She's a powerful lady.
Woo.
I just can't believe you get cast to stand around in episode 3. Maybe had one line that was cut. I think in an interview I heard her say that or something. You know that like,
Yeah.
and then through fate and craft and whatever else we get to this point where it's like, oh, you're the most capable actor in this show. Like you're really really good.
She is. I. I mean, it's an exceptional journey to have as like an actor to be like my big break. I got cast as Mon Mothma in a basically non-speaking role in Star Wars. Like the fact
Yeah.
that I get to be a part of that to begin with is amazing. And then probably having no expectations outside of that, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that was a fun thing that I did. And then like, hey, we're gonna make a Rogue One movie that's about right before the Death Star. We want you to come back as Mon Mothma. It's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? Yeah, I'd love to do that. And then they're like, hey, you know how you were in Rogue One? We're now going to do a show that you're going to be basically one of the lead characters in as Mon Mothma. like that journey from like extra to like crushing ass in an amazing Star Wars TV show is like a
Yeah.
dream come true. It has to be because she's getting all sorts of amazing scene work to do
Yeah.
in this that like supersedes the hype of, Revenge of the Sith scene that was on the cutting room floor, all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff,
Yeah.
to like, hey, this is legitimately one of the best things that's happening right now. Also, fun fact as I'm looking this, she's the voice of Moira in the game Overwatch.
Oh, how about that? That's
There you
wild.
go.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, that's she had many more lines as Moira than she had as Mon Mothma
Yeah,
up to this point. And
up
BC
to this
that
point, yeah.
when she's I mean obviously the dinner party scene is
Oh,
excellent. Wonderful stuff, but that scene where she goes in to talk to Luthen um and she's like you did this, you crazy man. It's like I don't know, man. That scene would not have half the impact that it does if it weren't for her just like killing it and having like a full response to like the weight of of the situation. I was
a
just pretty
full
blown away.
a full response and a textured response too. That
Yeah,
I think again, complexity is going to be kind of my watchword for the day. Is that in the best possible way, and that this show is humanizing these characters so much that it's not the simple good versus evil that we're
yeah,
used to. Like that there are, and I think this is kind of one of the mission statement shows, like that we need to show the cost, the human cost of what all of this giant galaxy-wide star war really is, and the toll that that takes, and how that affects individuals. So you see her and Luthen obviously sympathetic to each other on the same side, but having very different points of view about how these things are happening, and how she is going to grow into the rebellion as opposed to Luthen is in a different stage of the rebellion. It's not always, hey, we're on the same page. We got to go blow up the Death Star. It's, are we terrorists? Are we is
yeah,
this what we are? And it's kind of like, yeah, we needed that to happen. So we're terrorists now
yeah. Which
in
is
a very real sense.
that's the uh I don't know that it was handled perfectly well in Rebels or Clone Wars or whatever, or to its fullest potential. But I was always fascinated by Saw and the partisan whatever
Yeah.
his partisan army. It's like the more terrorist versus the less terrorist aspect of the rebellion is great to me because to not that degree, but there are a lot of movements that I care about having that kind of struggle with them themselves. We just had the soup thrown on the Van Gogh protest, Brady, which I've seen people on both sides of seemingly the same thing, which is like, hey, we really do need to get rid of fossil fuels and start thinking about how the planet is dying. But I saw responses to that from like Star Wars Twitter accounts that were like, these people should be hanged. And then I saw, responses that were like, actually, this seems like it's a pretty effective way to get people talking. Like, um, so like I like seeing that reflected in our rebellion of like, yeah, there's politics inside of the politics, and it's probably going to be a miserable, a miserable thing to get people to agree to any level, much less to the point of like, oh yeah, we're going to put our bodies on the line.
Yeah, getting people to agree on anything at this point is a real pain in the keister. And it's nice. Again, it's nice to see that reflected in a Star War, speaking to not just the fantasy world that we live in, but speaking to our reality as it relates to us, the viewer, like the current day audience, that something of that is recognizable and reflected in our lives in a deep and, to me, meaningful way, which is why it's resonating so thoroughly. Yeah, I think to me that scene is really good, but the highlight, my my Mon Mothma highlight, is that dinner party scene,
Yeah, it's rad.
which is one of my favorite just dialogue scenes in Star Wars. Just as like
Oh yeah,
the way that it's shot, moving through the party with her and what's his name, old blue cloak,
yeah.
Tay Tay Colma.
I felt
Uh,
like I'd seen him in a Star Wars Senate chamber before, but I don't know. I don't know.
Possibly. Um, Tay Colma of the Bank of Colma, who is essentially, again, you get this idea of people being in different stages or phases of what we would, I guess, would call the rebellion, or having sympathy towards, certainly anti-imperial sympathies. But he's sort of noting, hey, my personal political tastes are probably a little extreme for you. And she's like, bitch, I'm Mon Mothma. What you're gonna need to understand is that I'm probably a little farther afield than you think I am. But like the way that she's revealing herself in that moment of like, I know what everyone's perception of me is, but I need you to understand that something else is going on, and you've got access to all of my family's money. I'm gonna get my hands on that cheddar. Like the fact that there's a specific point about the scene of her having a clear objective of like, I need to get my family's money, to feeling him out in terms of, okay, well, it's really hard for me being who I am to say, or it's a risk for me to even say who I am because there's spies everywhere. I'm surrounded all the time. Just the like feeling out of that, the fact that it's taking place in this beautiful set. She's in this like immaculate Star Wars costume that looks amazing. I mean, again, it's the synthesis of all of those design elements supporting an amazing scene that's well written.
And we've got
Is Go ahead.
Baron to cut to as well. I
Oh,
think is a key part of that is we already know what a sleaze this guy is, and he does such a good job. All you have to do is cut to him for a second, and then there's your
just
danger.
lounging and like
And
talking, he's like,
yes,
ah, freaking Farron. But yeah, like the fact that the interpersonal warmth that she has towards this old friend who she needs something from, but it definitely seems like it's like, just divorce Farron and marry this guy. It seems like you're going to be much happier. Like, I'm ready for the first Star Wars divorce episode at this point, you
oh,
know?
but then he could sink her.
Yeah.
He and his
So
daughter.
yeah, yeah. But I don't know. It was so good on so many subtle levels that it just weaved together so many amazing elements that I was just like, all right, I just was like gobsmacked by this episode, and it's simple things. It's as much as I love a good lightsaber fight on Mustafar,
Yeah.
or Obi-Wan and Vader having a fight on a named planet that nobody cares about. Like, this is to me the most interesting version of Star Wars at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just in love with what these characters are doing and the relationships that they're having and the subtlety and the complexity and the beautiful density of what all of these moments are and how well and carefully the story is being told.
Yeah. Uh yeah, it's bonkers. Yeah, the daughter interrupting in the middle, and us not
Yes.
knowing or not needing it explained right in our face what's happening, like in that moment. Like being left in the dark with Mon Mothma is good. The last thing I wanted to say about her performance, the construction of the character, is Mon Mothma existed in Return of the Jedi to me and in Dark Forces growing up, and kind of this otherworldly kind of like
It's
I'm
almost like
Mon Mothma,
ethereal.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that this like Mon Mothma, it still feels like a totally real person, but someone who is unrelatable in that way of like, oh, you're just kind of on a different level. And she does seem to care about power more than her family. I could be wrong, but that's like kind of the kind of person who winds up as the figurehead of a movement, like eventually, right?
Mhm.
And I kind of buy it, even though this is a much fuller, characterization. I do get when I watch Return of the Jedi, I'm not going to look at that Mon Mothma and be like, "There's no way we got from here to there." Like, it's not like watching Anakin turn into Vader. you know,
Yeah.
not like
What
watching
the hell happened there?
little
Yeah.
boy, little boy Jake Lloyd into
Yeah.
full James Earl Vader. Um,
A perfectly seamless transition. Yeah, it is. Yeah, she existed as a sort of very like almost like alien, like a alien humanoid
a
figure, you
sad
know,
alien, yeah,
so like
sad
pristine
royal
and
alien.
yeah, and it's like oh, which was always kind of like she looks so interesting that I'm just like sure she's the leader of something, but now it's like getting filling in that backstory. I'm like oh okay yeah I can see with the connective tissue going to where we are going to see her.
And I
Um,
can see her being so sad and ethereal out of out of just like a sense of loss. Do you think there's a chance this guy is a spy, BC?
of course I do.
Are you
Yeah, of
worried
course.
about this
Of
guy?
course I'm worried about this guy. Anyone in Mon Mothma's I'm worried about because I don't want any harm to befall my wonderful Mon. I feel very protective of Mon Mothma at this point, and of course I'm worried about our new friend Tay Kolma and his access to all of her family's money.
uh,
Yes, I'm very worried.
BC, while we're here on this party scene, if I can knock out a quick one of my top five,
Please.
and I don't have mine in any particular order here, but I had extras and creatures, and of course there's some great creatures in this episode. I like how they're being used, and by creatures I
Mm-hmm.
mean aliens, so maybe fully sentient beings and all that. Anyway, but really the extras, BC, comparing the extras in this show to something like Obi-Wan, where it's like, you know what, I didn't have this thing, and it's also how it's shot, right? Like that
Yeah.
helps, but just the fact that
Yeah.
that party sequence, there weren't extras that stood out to me and got in the way. It's the same when we're at the beach. Like, a character is only a character I wonder about if they're doing something interesting or look interesting, instead of, I just feel like over the course of these volume shows, I've had a lot of like, yep, that guy was really excited to be there on the day. Like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Just really big reactions.
Wow!
And
Star Wars.
which is what I would do.
I get it. No, I'm like you better put a mask on me because I'm just gonna be like
Yeah.
the whole time.
But we don't have that in this show. That there are lots of extras, and they just make the world feel bigger. So shout out to all the extras. Shout out to the people directing the extras. Like that party
Yeah.
scene, you better believe they spent some time with everybody who's in that scene at all,
I mean,
to
I mean, I was just thinking about the complexity of the scene itself and the way that it's blocked and staged and the way that it moves throughout the space.
yeah.
It's not just like you're not just in a room getting, coverage and then reverse
Well,
shots
we
of
can
each other.
knock
It's
out
like,
another one of mine right here,
yeah,
VC, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
tracking shots.
Yeah.
They're beautiful tracking shots here and in the ISB, and they cut together sometimes. Where we're following Mon Mothma to then following, someone down an ISB hallway.
Yeah, I think the tracking shots in this are in this being the party scene are particularly magnificent just because of how come again the complexity of it how many moving parts there are to this. You have a big a big space that's being filled. It's a party scene. I can speak personally to how much of a pain it is to have to deal with just like if you're directing something and it's like okay, there's a lot of bodies populating a stage or a space or an area. It's like, okay, there's a lot of coordination that goes into that before you can even get into like, here's what the scene is about. It's just like, okay, all of you bodies in the scene, we need to be on the same page in terms of tonally what's going on, what's happening here, before we can even start talking to, or speaking about what the actual dialogue of the story is, because you have to set the tone of that world and that the party tonally was just like it's like this is a perfect mixer and it's not in your face there's nothing like wild or crazy happening and within that you start moving this scene with Mon Mothma and Tay through like okay now we have to have our sort of our spy thriller talk as we're moving throughout this kind of very, um, you know, very organized kind of party chaos. Chaos is probably the wrong word, but there's a lot of bodies in that space, and then you're moving the camera through that space as well. The shots that they get are beautiful, and the performances are great too, and it's all just upheld by the world that's created around them in terms of the atmosphere of the actual party, the costumes, the sets, the lights. I mean, all of it is pristine to me. I have
It's
no
top
notes
tier,
on the party
baby.
scene. No notes on this scene.
The best we've ever gotten on Coruscant.
Yeah,
They
I
keep
this
topping
is
the Coruscant.
I was gonna honorable mention Coruscant in general.
Yeah, shout out to this new New
Oh,
Yorkian sector of
yes.
Coruscant. We're clearly like on a little separate part of the planet from the Jedi Temple, right? Where we've got this architecture. What's it called?
It's like Art Deco.
Yeah, yeah, it's much more Art Deco. Although, I mean, I guess Coruscant is always Art Deco, but this is more pointy and sharp, and the other is more roundy over
Yeah.
wherever they are.
Roundier and glowier.
Around
This
here.
feels this feels a little more like steel architecture.
Yeah, it
You
feels
know, like
like the
steel
New
and
York
concrete.
section of.
That was like there was one shot specifically where I was like, is that did they just take footage from New York City and
Yeah,
just like delete the streets?
and add a
Well,
few
like
pipes. Yeah,
yeah, that was the exact feeling that I was like, oh, this feels very urban. You know, like this feels like a very big city. Again, it's a small thing, but it feels m- it's still Star Wars, but it feels very relatable to things that we as viewers know as a relatable reality.
yeah, yeah, and it doesn't hurt the Star Wars of it. Go figure.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't have to be like we have to go Star Wars times 10 on this. It's like, no, you can just say Star Wars and do a couple things and then we'll buy it. Like
But
one of the ones that was most like, okay, it's Star Wars, but it's the real world was it's just the Clea walking to her scene with Vel through
oh
some of those
yeah,
things
yeah,
like
that's on my list. So I
do
mean, we can
that
knock that
one.
out too. I mean, we're
Yeah, because
almost done with my list.
I've got Vel and Clea espionage scene as my number 5. So let's do that.
Yeah, I have that as well. I called it the steamy underbridge. Uh,
Yeah, the steamy underbridge.
it's yeah, this is the most like terrestrial Star Wars has been maybe with all this brick and like it
Yes.
does look like a city and they're in the subway. But one, it works for me, and two, it's got the sheen of like '60s spy thriller on top of it.
Yep.
And yeah, it doesn't look as much like Star Wars as a '60s spy thriller, and I don't care. Like I don't know, I really liked it. I like the walking there. I like their meeting, and also BC just thought that scene was steamy. These are both beautiful people who look like real people at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Which I don't know that I like that. It does it for me.
Hmm.
And they have this little secret meeting. We don't know if they've been involved romantically or not in the past or whatever. But yeah, I love this scene.
Yeah, I love the scene too. And, and again, I'm a sucker for just tracking shots of walking in a wide establishing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and the fact like I was like because I noticed the brick, like that there's brick in Star Wars,
And
which I
there's
don't think
some
I've
in
ever.
Ferrix, but this is like really brick.
Yeah, I'm like, that's brick.
Yeah, it's
That's like
Earth brick.
1970s brick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's human Earth brick. But I didn't care at all that it felt like to me it's the brilliance of what this is doing, which is Star Wars is one thing. Andor is telling a, a very different version of the Star Wars saga, right? It is that grounded human element of it, and seeing those things, seeing brick, I was like, yeah, of course that there's if you're on the ground level, these are the sorts of things you're going to see. Like the higher up you get, the architecture is going to shift and change, and the higher you are on Coruscant, things are going to look different. But as we're in a very sort of, I mean, it is a total spy thriller scene. Like the way
Yeah.
that it's shot, the dialogue between them, like I love this scene. of just like, hey, you're gonna have to kill Cassian. Is like, oh my god, yeah, we're like straight up 70s spy thriller at this point. And it all starts with just the tracking walk to me of those textures of the set
The
and feeling
color, yeah.
like muted dark like I, weird to say almost like damp colors and
Yeah,
just grounded in
dingy.
yeah like grimy gritty like it very much plays into that espionage spy thriller genre perfectly for this scene like again they nailed all of those production elements to get exactly what they wanted out of this scene which is like hey well, that's how things should be done way to go amazing we are being spoiled with Star Wars right now.
And the texture that the costumes add of like, guess what? You don't know who Vel is at all. Like
Yeah,
you don't know what's real. You don't know if she's more at home, being out in the field all beat up, or dressed up fancy walking around in the city. You don't know, you weirdos. Like I love that. Like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't consider that. Like,
like I had to do a double take of like, is that Vel? I'm so used to our crunchy granola out in the woods camp version of Vel, but it's like, of course, if she's connected with Luthen in some way, like she probably has access to a higher society, and seeing her in this way, it's like, oh yeah, we get even more. I mean, it just adds to the spy throws. Like we get even more mystery surrounding this character, and the context of the scene obviously is like, okay, now you got to go kill that guy you just worked with. It's like, oh, okay, we got some real stuff going on here.
yeah. Yeah, looking forward to
Gr-
seeing that. I imagine she'll wind up breaking him out of jail rather than killing him. We'll see.
I think Cassian, he's out of jail and at the very beginning of the next episode.
Oh, really?
No, I don't know. I've been thinking
I,
about this.
I think we have a shot in the trailer that I thought were clone troopers. That I think
Mhm.
is the prison. A lot of orange jumpsuits going down a glass hallway is what I remember.
Nice. Yeah, I'm worried about our hero. I mean, he's left all of his loot up in that shower. So we'll see how that turns out. Hopefully he's able to get his big score back at some point, but yeah, I think that will be interesting because he's being hunted from multiple angles at this point, which is going to be fun.
Yeah. R.I.P. Cassian. Good luck.
Good luck getting out of this one, Cassian Andor.
Well, what else you got on your list there, BC?
So speaking of scale and people hunting a Cassian, I wanted to shout out our Karn arc. I started just by saying the synth music that
Yeah.
underscores Karn in this, and generally the scoring. This is by Nicholas Britell. The first 4 episode scores have been released on your music streaming platform, so
Oh, man.
check that out. But yeah, there's a synth drop when he's at his new job, um, that just tickled my funny bone in all the right ways. I'm like, we're getting sounds like in Star Wars that we haven't heard before. It's on the same level. Like the sounds of the Mandalorian
Yeah.
are very different too. And it's like, oh, it's such a different tone than your usual like John Williams, like horns and all that sort of stuff, but it fits the world so well. Like
Yeah.
I love the Mandalorian score. I love all the
Yeah,
stuff
me
that
too.
happens in that. And this too is again, it's a completely different sound, but it's got like an 80s synth wave kind of vibe
Yeah.
to some of the stuff. And when those moments hit, I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds just right
Yeah, it
for what is
sneaks in.
happening."
Sometimes it's really subtle. It's just like
Yeah.
one synth pad kind of building in the back, and it's like, yep, that's just right.
Yep.
And I
And
think the
it's
first episode starts with that. You just got a little bit of that bing bing kind of in there.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, this is gonna be good.
I'm like, "Ooh, this is a nice undertone that's not like, "Hey, look at me."
And then other times it is like, hey, look at me.
But
Sometimes we get that dance
oh,
track, which is a great
the
track.
and the I mean, there are times when it is very much, "Hey, look at me." The one that jumps out is it's either the end of episode 1 or episode 2. I think it's the second one. It says like Luthen's coming into town and Cassian's walking on the street. It just like starts like that thing just starts like slapping and you're like, "Oh oh yeah,
Oh
this is
yeah,
gonna be sick.
that's like
It's like a total beat drop.
the drum prog rock
Yeah,
track
yeah.
almost.
I was like,
I
whoa, that's
was
like an
talking about the end of this
announcement.
episode, the
But
synth,
yeah, oh yeah,
the like full on, which I've seen all over Twitter. People are like, "This tracks, jams." It does.
it totally jams. But I did want to just in addition to that Karn moment, pull out a couple things that I also loved about Karn and this. That we continue to get him being this small fish in a big pond
Yeah,
theme continuing. Like the shots of him previously like walking to his apartment was all like, look at the depth of the space. He's just this little guy who eats his cereal at his mom's house in this larger world who's kind of an embarrassment and a shameful screw up.
relatable.
Relatable stuff. And then it's like, okay, now he's gonna go to where he's just clacking away on a computer. I'm like, yeah, this is just a guy. But
Yeah,
it's though I think the way they're setting up his story is like it's a slow build to the path because he came in with such a hot entrance and it was like colossal failure by Cyril Karn has put him back in his place. So like that sort of fall in the beginning to see like he's obviously on a trajectory that's going to take him back in line with Cassian at some point is what it
yeah,
feels like, where it's like he's now still on the hunt, but he is just again, it's the scale of it. He's one guy in the midst of this huge imperial machine that has no care at all for who he is. Like, and it's visually represented in almost everything that he
yeah,
has been
yeah.
doing, where it's like he's just this tiny little guy walking down a giant hall. He's just this tiny little guy in a room full of thousands of people
Love,
working
love that
menial
set.
tasks. I do too.
And clearly that's got, there's a lot of CG elements in there, but it's blended like a Villavoo, a Denis Villavoo, Villavoo, movie. Like that guy who did Dune and played the new Blade Runner.
Yes.
It looks great, and it's just, it's super cool. I this world we exist in with all this like bureaucracy and human processing power, like data entry stuff. Heather Ann Campbell, who is a comedian writer, she's half of Becky Drysbell, or was BC, which when you visited once and we went and saw the
Yeah.
two lady improv team who like
Yeah. Yeah.
thrashed everyone for
Yeah.
35 weeks. She was half
Yeah.
of that too. She was like, I love that in Andor we're setting up this universe where it's like, um, hey, did you hear the guy who like took over the empire could shoot lightning out of his fingers? It's like, shut up. Give me the spreadsheets. Get back to the Q4 reports. It's like,
we
yeah, I find that so relatable. Like the way the ISB works is essentially how I do my job, where it's like, all right, I need massive amounts of data to find one problem. Like I imagine what a lot of people do, you know?
it's like that's what this is. Like it's relatable on a human level and it's not seeking to like glorify anything.
Yeah,
I mean and not to like I don't know. I assume we're gonna get to a lot more like righteousness and hero stuff as we go along. But right now it is very like it's gritty, it's human, it's kind of I mean, it's adult. This isn't kid Star Wars. It's like, yeah, I can relate to having a shitty job. You know what I mean? Like I can relate to going through a menial task. And I like the fact that I mean, if you're if not sympathetic to the Empire, you at least relate to some of the stuff that they're doing on a way it's like, yeah, they're just gotta do their jobs,
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's like not all of them are just like, we are evil for evil's sake. Like it's we have a point of view. It's a little fascist, a little imperial, but you understand why they're doing what they're doing. The show isn't like we're bad guys and we're bad guys for being bad reasons. I mean, you get a little bit of the beginning where we get shout out to Yularen coming in
Oh, sick.
and
Yeah,
and being like, we're gonna tax the crap out of everyone. We're going to be mean to the native populations and shut down their regional ceremonies and all this sort of stuff. I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, we get it. But then in the wake of that, you have people who are like, this is the bureaucracy. Like, all right, well, I gotta go do my job now. This is exactly what the rebels would want us to do, which it turns out it is. But it's like it's not like the majority of the bad guys are like, hey, I'm just a blanket evil. It's like, no, you're a human evil, or you're a human bad that has motivations that are to some degree understandable, at least, if not, likable.
Yeah, yeah. The the boardroom scenes,
My
all of that. I mean, the politics of that is super fun. I've seen the biggest meme I've seen come out of this episode is like, the dynamic in Star Wars has shifted, and it's like a bunch of dudes on a couch looking bored, and it's like watching a Star Wars action scene, and then they're all excited, and it's watching an ISB, briefing meeting. Yeah, they're super pumped, and it's like, yes, this is what we've needed for years. Of course, action scenes are boring. Like,
We've had a million
We've
of
seen
them.
them, and they're
We've had
usually very similar.
we've had
Like,
all of them over and over again. We've seen like it. I do have the Dedra and ISB on
oh,
my
shall we?
list.
Shall
Yeah,
we?
which yes, we've already touched a little bit on it, but yeah, I genuinely get like psyched. I'm like, oh, we got another ISB scene. I want to point out this exchange, which ends with one of my or ends with one of my favorite Star Wars lines of all time. Um, she Deidre is noting this is regarding all of their like these are all of the supervisors, I guess is the title. They're in the room, they're talking about, this is my region or whatever. She goes, um do you really think the rebels care about the lines we draw on maps? To which our Partigaz, who's the one who's drawn up the lines on the map, he says, you think the relevance of my work has been supplanted? She says, systems either change or die. His response is, thesis, please. And I was like, one of the best lines of all time, where he just goes, thesis, please. And they get into it. Like, again, there is there are new thoughts being brought to the table that are okay, here's the reasoning for why the empire is doing, which makes it so much more interesting than just like, we're bad,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
going to do the
absolutely.
bad things, as opposed to, hey, the sort of infighting and squabbling that we're having internally as this own sort of organism, as the empire, is motivating our actions. So the fact that there's infighting about these you know, lines on the map that, hey, we can't be fighting about this. We need to be looking at the totality of what's happening if we want to be the quote, the healthcare providers to the galaxy. We need to stop worrying about my territory, your territory, and start sharing all this information. You get the very real like contrast to this being like a 9/11 sort of event that leads to the Patriot Act, where it's like, okay, well, now the Empire has the Patriot Act of their, hey, we can just access information from everywhere. And she's like, yeah, that's what I did. I you weren't giving me the information, so I used the Imperial Patriot Act to go and find what I needed. So now I've got proof of what I've been doing. Uh, and so Partagas like sees what she's doing as being like, okay, this isn't the rules. This isn't the way that typically we've been playing by the books. But he recognizes in her that, okay, well, if we want to fight, we need to readjust the way that we've been approaching the rebels now because this is evolving. It makes their story so much more interesting when we see them adapting and changing and growing in their response too, because we're invested in this evil that is hunting down or in pursuit of our heroes and upping the stakes for what they're doing, as opposed to it just being a blanket like, we're going after the good guys
I don't know,
with with
BC.
with a general mandate.
I don't know. Why would you want all that tension and drama that comes from watching both sides of the plan unfold when you could have 1,000 star destroyers?
You're right. That
With
was
Death
infinitely
Star.
better. That was much better storytelling. A million planet killers, all killing planets at
Oh man. Yeah, I love it. I love it,
Oh,
BC. I love getting
yeah.
not only the full rounded view, but yeah, just like a look at the universe, which I think ties into my final one here. Yes, which is just the universe feels like it's getting big again rather than collapsing
Mm,
on itself. As we see these little pieces of a larger universe, and everyone who is presented as a character is interesting enough and rounded enough to not just be, a one sentence Wikipedia page entry. It's like I want to know about each of these characters and I may not, which is exciting. Like it's nice to see someone and be like, I wonder what their life is like, what they're up to, and then it's gone. Like rather than everyone someone's cousin, we're jumping back and forth across the galaxy all the time. No, you get the idea that every interaction has its own specific weight and consequence. I love it, and these scenes are a big part of it. Where it's like, yeah, the 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 idea of the Empire as this massive political organization is way more interesting than just the big space baddies, who are already perfectly big brothered or whatever.
yeah, you always wonder about like it seems like a large organization. How does that work?
Yeah,
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 that's just like a natural question. Like grow like as a child, the empire works as a visual evil, right? Like
yeah.
you look at that and you're like, okay, I understand that Big Brother is bad. As you grow older, you're like, it seems like it'd be really hard to coordinate all of this stuff
Yeah.
across the entire galaxy. Seems like there's probably a story to tell there. And now we're getting that, and I'm like, oh, it's so good.
Gives me a lot of hope for when Thrawn shows up.
I was about to say the exact same.
It's gonna be awesome.
I was like,
Like, can you
put
imagine?
Ron in this, and I'm like, oh, oh, oh,
Yeah, just
oh.
imagine that big blue guy walking into that boardroom.
My head would explode off of my body if Thrawn showed up at an ISB meeting. It would explode. My head would explode.
Oh
Because
man,
it would be like as much as it would feel like fan service, it would also perfectly fit the entire tone
yeah.
of what this is to have that dude walk into this scene and be like, "Okay, you wanna talk about strategy? Here I am."
Ooh, they
It's like,
better not
"Ooh."
cast someone's friend in that role, BC, because one thing these ISB scenes really underline is how difficult, or I guess they don't underline how difficult it is, but it is difficult to cast power dynamics correctly in a room full of powerful and ambitious people like that. Um, you to have Thrawn come in and clumsily deliver some lines that people are supposed to respect, or be scared of, and it not land right. It's like that scene where Andor walks into camp, and I was like, wow, it's incredible that Diego Luna can pull that off, because it's a difficult thing to come in low status and establish yourself as high status amongst, you know, hard people.
A
Or
tight-knit group that's
yeah.
been is very insulated.
And I imagine the same problem with Thrawn if Thrawn were to walk into a meeting of already established, people like that. I'd be like, here, I'm going to throw my weight around.
It would be an interesting challenge thinking about it from the actor's perspective because one, I mean, you're gonna we'll just get in the weeds about acting. Like one, you immediately have the status because of like the military rank of everything that the
Yeah.
empire has. Like I love the little like I've got two blue squares.
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
three blue squares. Well, I've got one that's red. So I'm like, I don't know what any of it means, but clearly like it's the more squares the better. Or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, but to have him walk in and immediately have like, okay, well,
Oh, well, you mean
everyone,
full admiral already.
yeah, well, like having people respond to his status walking in the room, that's something you've got to sell to all the other performers. But then you do have to have cast an actor who one isn't just going to be like, okay, I'm wearing the costume, people are going to respond to that, but can carry the charisma and the persuasion and the intelligence that Thrawn has. Uh, I think I think would just be a fun challenge as whoever they do cast. I'm sure that I mean I know they're kicking around the idea that the guy who voices Thrawn is going to be playing him in the live action, but Uh, whoever ends up being cast, I'm sure they are going to spend. There's going to be some board meetings about that, I would
His
imagine.
head doesn't look right.
What the bumps on his forehead are wrong.
They better not get that head wrong, BC.
If they get his head wrong, so help me God.
That actor better look exactly like he did in the cartoon shows where they cast it wrong.
Or it's all wrong and Star Wars is dumb and I'm gonna watch it until you why. Cool. Cool.
Cool.
That's cool. Cool.
That's fine, John.
That's
What
lovely,
you
John.
want to do?
Well, I'm sorry you don't like the shape of his head, John.
Can we change this to a podcast where we just imagine if the Beatles were watching Star Wars together?
I'll tell you the way he blew up the Death Star. Lovely.
Paul just thinks everything is lovely.
Lovely. It's like he's fixing a hole.
Oi. Oh, hey, you kissed a brother. Lovely.
Well, I'm not against it.
Full on lip lock with a brother, eh?
Little bit of spittle between them, as you see.
We do this podcast and we're both Paul.
If the Beatles were 4 Pauls, we'll have to
man.
double our voices.
What a
So we can
band.
get all 4 of us.
I'd love to see
Yeah,
them
man.
argue with each other.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Last point for me. Shout out to Fiona Shaw as Marva, delivering one of the great Star Wars moments of what it means to love in the Star Wars universe. We get the line from Cassian as they're sort of having their separation, where she's like, I'm not going anywhere. I've got the rebellion to fight for here. He says, I won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time. Her response, that's just love. And I'm like, ugh, gut me. Kill me, Marva. Like the delivery is, I mean, it's those sort of heightened emotional moments can feel kind of weird in Star Wars, but it takes performance to sell that, as opposed to, say, some of the tumbling and the tumbleweeds that we get with Anakin and Padme, where they're trying to sell us some idea of love. Like this is a real moment of like, hey, that's what this is, and it is played pitch perfect. Fiona Shaw, shout out to you as Marva.
Yeah, big time shout out. Good stuff, BC. Excellent casting and performances still through the show. Amazing writing, amazing production value. This is I'm a feared BC, especially because there's a lot of talk online about how this isn't being viewed nearly as much as other Star Wars stuff, which a lot of reasons for that. Mostly I blame people being stupid. Like,
human stupidity.
Yeah,
shocking in the Star Wars community.
It's amazing to me, as someone who's kind of all in on Star Wars, it's amazing to me that there's like a large group of people out there who are like, I only kind of like Star Wars, or I don't care to watch everything Star Wars, but I will watch it if it's about Boba Fett, versus like something I'm not really sure about. And then I imagine it's not like there's going to be a huge surge at any point, because this is, again, this is like a slow, dramatic show that I guess it's a smaller audience these days. Like, this is exactly what I want, so I'm trying to savor it, because I know there's not going to be more of it for a long time after season 2 of this. That's what I'm feeling. Anyway.
I mean, I think we're getting 2 seasons and then we're done, and then we're out. So,
well, I mean, even just tonally from Star Wars going forward, like this might be a peak from which I don't see another one. And then
I was gonna, there was an article that's like, is this going to ruin the rest of Star Wars for me, or going forward? Because I mean, I know nothing about who's actually. The people, like, we obviously talk about it. We've got a show where we do that.
Yeah.
But other friends of mine who have been watching are like, yeah, this is good. I'm like,
I can't convince my friends to watch it. I can't convince them to. Like, you tapped out at the wrong time.
yeah, like I'm not going on my way to be like, hey, you've got to watch Andor, but I am genuinely like, it is the best Star Wars that's on Disney.
Yeah, that's
That's
what
what
I've
I will
told people
say.
too. Is like, well,
It's
you can,
it's better than it's better than The Mandalorian in my opinion.
yeah,
It's definitely better than Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett by kind of a long shot.
yeah,
I can get people sort of being like, yeah, I watched Kenobi, I watched Book of Boba Fett, fine, but it's like you got to watch this though because it's something completely different. It's adult. It like if you like, I mean, not to get into like the House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones things, but like if you like those adult sort of sci-fi fantasy shows, this is kind of exactly that. And if you like Star Wars, you'll probably love this. So I'm not giving a hard sell too much, but it's like if people are sleeping on it, then uh, your loss, my gain.
yeah.
I absolutely love it, so I'm all in on it.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting a season two. I'm glad they put that into
Oh, it's
production
already in the
before
work.
this. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, they're
yeah,
filming it now, I think.
yeah. It's like I'm glad that it wasn't like, well, the numbers are
Yeah, because that
no
would have
that.
been, ooh, what a heartbreak that would have been.
I would have been crushed. I mean, the word of mouth. I mean, I feel like it's at a certain point, word of mouth is going to be like, "Hey, yeah, you're all sleeping on the best Star Wars that you're just not."
And Disney's
It's
going to
like,
be making Star Wars for forever. So when this is
yeah,
a cult classic, or when it starts to gain that mass appeal 10 years from now or whatever, they'll
yeah,
make something else like it, I guess.
yeah. But to go back to your point, I am worried about Star Wars going forward being able to come anywhere close to this.
Yeah,
Like I'm because when we first talked a long time ago on a Twitch stream, generally about like I think it was the second time we did a Twitch stream. It was like, hey, here's what's coming out in Star Wars. Oh, okay, yeah, we've got Kenobi, cool. We've got Boba Fett. We've got Andor. Andor. We've got the again the Sith show that's going to be coming out. This was the one that was kind of like brushed aside as like I don't know what's. I mean, Andor. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I
But
was
the
kind
fact
of
that it is
like,
as good as it is like yeah, all right.
I was really upset about it because I was like, okay, so you're making a show that isn't about a Luke Skywalker or an Obi-Wan, but you still got to throw in, like, we can't start fresh, start
Yeah,
from scratch. I was like, why are we doing this? And I don't know, I kind of maintain that opinion of just like, why do we need to go back to where we've been already? Until I saw the trailer, and then
yeah.
immediately my mind was like, oh, well, it looks way better than everything else, so who cares? Like,
I mean, I think generally people are just like Rogue One fans. I think are pretty diehard, but it's not like the biggest Star Wars movie. So it, Andor just doesn't have the name recognition
yeah,
of Kenobi or whatever. It's like so it's like okay, I mean, I get that to a degree, but it's like you really shouldn't be sleeping on it just because it's the Andor show. It's also the Rebellion. It's the Mon Mothma show. It's
yeah.
all these other. It's the show about the Empire. It's so much more than just the title. So yeah, I I just hope that whatever quality exists in this writing, production, I mean across the board, everything about this that's been so good can in some way carry over or touch any other Star Wars project that exists.
Yeah.
It's making me like not like nervous, but I'm not as like excited to go back to Mandalorian now. It's like, we're gonna go back to Volume One, which will be
Yeah.
fun, and we're gonna get to see our little green baby friend. He's gonna have his little mithril on. It's like I don't know. I as much as I have enjoyed Mandalorian, I don't know that anything is gonna be as good as what this show is tonally for me. So
Oh,
I'm concerned.
I I think I'll be excited for Mandalorian when it gets here. I think it's going to have a
Yeah,
higher production value than season 2 did. I could be wrong, but I think they're going to pull
I'm
out the
sure.
stops there
I'm sure
too.
it will. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to watch the train heist episode of Mandalorian season 2, even though I love that episode and remember loving it. It's got depth, and it's got one of my favorite scenes with the Imperial officer. I'm not going to watch that nearly as many times as I'm going to watch this episode of Andor in my life.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
but I think I will. I think I'll still be excited about Mando. I don't know, but yeah, I'm just trying to savor this Andor. BC, we got 5 more episodes. I'm glad to be getting it. This is a peak of the franchise. Here.
Yep, I agree. This is a top tier Star Wars.
Well, BC, should we record a little bit of hobby talk here?
A little bit of hobby talk.
I've just finished Star Wars Jedi Academy.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
finished that Star Wars horror book, which I've read before in the past. I think it's called like Death Troopers or something. It's something that doesn't make sense. uh, just in time for old Halloween. I'll find it. It's called Death Troopers, which terrible name. It doesn't really explain the book at all.
All right.
But yeah, we can talk about that. We'll be talking top Star Wars. That'll be on our YouTube channel. Anything else, BC, before we get out of here?
Hey, subscribe, 5 stars. Do all those things. You know us. You love us. We're the Cargo Bay, and you're our cargo baby.
Oh, Father, please.
Please.